What's up, guys? Are you looking to work with me as your life coach without spending all the money? Well, I have a perfect product and service for you. The Life Coach Zach app. I recently launched the Life Coach Zach app earlier this year, and it has a ton of resources and services that are perfect for you, including, but not limited to, guided affirmations, guided meditations, exclusive podcasts, and mindfulness exercises for you to live your best life. Head over to lifecoachzach.app and download the app today. Mia, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hop on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Awesome. After reading your bio and learning a little bit about you, it seems like we have a lot in common. So to all the people that are listening and watching on YouTube, today my guest is Mia Hewett, best-selling author, founder, and CEO of Aligned Intelligence, helping entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs break through to their next level of success. Mia, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing so great. I love this conversation, and I'm really super excited about it.
Amazing. Love that. So to all the people that are listening that are entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, what does it take to be successful?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, actually. I love that question. So it's, how, Zach, and everything in life that is successful has a recipe, right? Like from somebody who's like a nutritionist like yourself, I really think you'll really see that, right? There's a recipe to anything that we want in life. The key is going to be understanding what that recipe is. And then inside of the recipe, there's these key ingredients, right? Like if we've never baked a cake before and we were going to bake a cake, we would have to understand the recipe, but then we also have to understand the order of ingredients. And you cannot leave out an ingredient or change the order of it. Have you noticed that?
I love that. So I feel like we all have different recipes, but what's the one ingredient that's in every recipe?
Yeah. Oh, this is great. So there's several inside of it because I don't want to give you a half-ass ingredient, right? Like that would be like totally a disservice to you. But can you feel that inside of being successful, the first thing that you would have to have is awareness on the right problem? Have you noticed in your industry as well that everyone who comes to you has the wrong problem?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the very first recipe is we have to have awareness on the right problem. Then once we have awareness on the right problem, we're going to have to make a decision to actually face it and look lovingly at it, right? It's not enough to just become aware of it. And this is why it is the greatest disservice to people that they think that awareness is enough to achieve a result. And it's not their fault. Like, don't you think like we would learn this in school, right? If you were to recite something back and memorize it, you could get an A. But
Yep.
in life, it doesn't
Yep.
actually work that way. Just because you know something doesn't mean you're going to get an A. You actually have to do something. I know you get this with me, but I really want to really help people really know the truth. I'm such a stand for the truth. So the first step is being aware of the right problem. The second step is you're going to have to really decide to look lovingly. The third step is then you now have to gain understanding, which means because you've had the wrong problem, you have a misunderstanding or a misconception that is actually blocking you from what you really need to. So the third piece I should say in that recipe is you now have to look lovingly without judgment, right? Because your ego, your protective self is going to want to defend, delete, distort what the information is because you don't want to be wrong. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a humility to be successful.
Love that word.
It takes freaking humility. Don't you? Yeah, let me let you say it.
My favorite word.
Yeah, it so does. And listen, I've been on both spectrums. Like when I say that, I mean, I, grew up poor and, I don't have anyone in my family that knew how to do this. My parents were not entrepreneurs. I wasn't the girl that was I hear all these success stories and, the people that are successful and they're like, oh, I was selling this at 3 years old or 10, and I'm like, I was totally the opposite. I was hiding and avoiding. I was so scared to be seen. I was the complete opposite. of everything that is out there. And so the reason I say that is I've been on both spectrums, meaning I was in inferiority ego when I first started out, right? Only to then, a lot of the misunderstanding people have about success is they think that success has to do with figuring something out and then they're going to be successful. So they think the people that are successful don't have their egos running them, which is a very funny thing because ego, right? So this is why I say this. This is why it's such a great conversation, because I became successful in I built a first multi-million-dollar company. And then I was like, why do I still feel inadequate? Like I couldn't understand. I thought success was going to have me figure it out. I'm going to like feel, and then I was going to be like, I've arrived. I've got this. I thought it was going to be this, like, I don't know what I thought, but I thought some illusion of like the parting of the oceans or something. And this miraculous thing was going to appear anyway. But what happens is then because I was willing to do the work, take enough effort, it doesn't matter if I was in burnout, struggling. That was my first company. Then I was like, wait, what? And then I went on the other side of ego, which is the superiority ego, right? But I didn't even think that I was being that. I just would be like, oh, I know this. I know this. Oh, I know that. I know that. Like I just really was so into superiority ego at that moment. I didn't realize either one of those were ego, and both are just the protective self. So it's not that I'm saying one's right, one's wrong. I'm just saying that what happens in truth is that you can build a multi-million-dollar company from ego, but eventually you will burn out, or you will start to self-destruct, right? Like, let me hear it from you.
What's the point if you're not feeling fulfilled and accomplished? We can always chase more. We can always make more money, be happier, be healthier, look better. But at the end of the day, you have to be happy with yourself. And I know you talk a lot about unapologetically being yourself, right? And that's something that we all struggle with. But back to the recipe for a successful entrepreneur, the first thing you said was awareness. And that's something that most of us lack these days. But you said there's a second layer. It's awareness, and then being able to exercise your free will to actually do the thing that you're aware of. So we can be aware that we're lazy. We can be aware that we're eating like shit. We can be aware that we're not going to the gym and we're neglecting our mental health. But if we're not doing anything about it, awareness is useless, right?
So, yeah. No, I love where you're going with this, because I actually show you how to actually really, where is your potential, right? Like a lot of people misunderstand, and myself included. I used to I'd hear like the power of now. Well, where the hell is now? Like, where is that power? I'm like a real practical girl. I'm like, sure, what does that mean? And how, not only what does that mean, but how do I get there, right? And so there's a few more steps in that recipe, right? And so where we're going inside of what you're talking about, which I absolutely love, is really what we're talking about is like, where is your potential? And so here's what I want to say before I show it to you, because this is going to be freaking awesome for those that really are really getting what I'm giving them. It's going to blow their mind. Okay, so the first thing is that I want you all to understand that is what's stopping you is not logical, it's emotional. Okay, now the reason I say this is that's why we can't think greater than how we feel, right? So if we don't heal this emotional side of ourselves, right, that's really sabotaging. Where is sabotaging coming from? It's all emotional. It's not in the mind. It's in the subconscious mind. It's in the body.
So for an example, we can't think we're going to be successful. We have to feel like we're going to be successful.
Absolutely. 1,000%. It's not in the thinking. It's in the feeling. Right. The secret is in the feeling state. It is not in the thinking. So inside of that, like going down deep inside, because we've never been taught what our emotions mean. What do they really mean? They're actually, our emotions are our internal guidance system, our mirror, that are always showing us at every moment whether the thought we are thinking is in alignment with what we want or out of alignment with what we want. Right? So, like, this is why to gain greater clarity in different situations, different circumstances, different events, different types of people, right? We have to have a skill where we can actually process our emotions, right? Be able to sort the truth from the lie so that we come into. So, what is potential? Potential is actually your ability to expand in the moment,
Right.
right?
Control our
And then by doing
emotional
this,
intelligence is basically what we're talking about.
yeah, I call it aligned
Okay.
intelligence.
I like
It's just the way that I've trademarked it in the sense of like where I'm showing how to get there, but it is what you're talking about. But I always hate to use the word emotional intelligence because sometimes the definition of what people mean by that is very different than what I'm
right.
meaning.
Okay.
But I'm right with you.
So
So the key, yeah, go ahead.
aligned intelligence is thinking something, but also feeling it, but using that feeling to go on our potential. Is that kind of to summarize what we're
Yeah.
talking about over here?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. So I'm going to show it to you,
Perfect.
okay? So let's say this is your head, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be your head. And then where you really want to get to is over here, which is inside of your feeling state, which is your intuition,
Right.
right? So this is in the feeling state, right? And so how you access your potential or a higher level of consciousness, it's actually when you come out of your head and it's in the space in between. How you access it is your greatest power of choice. So this is where free will really lives, right inside of here, right? So what we're doing is we're going from the ego or our protective self, and we're accessing our aligned self, the greater, like who we really are, or like a true self, whatever you want to call that.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of that, it would be your true self. This is how you really live from flow, which I know you're a big proponent of flow.
Absolutely.
Inside of it, this is also the way that I'm going to show you how to do this. This is also how you uncover your limiting beliefs, you process your emotions, really see what's really triggering you, really being able to stop the destructive thinking and the self-sabotage, become aware and recognize the self-sabotaging loop you're in, right? This is how we interrupt the negative patterns that are causing the self-sabotage. So it's basically like this. There's 5 steps to get out of your head and into the aligned self.
Because most of us
And
spend our time in our head. Like we think too much and we
yep,
create problems that
yep,
don't exist and we're afraid of things that aren't going to
yes,
happen and we don't think we're good
yes.
enough and we that's our ego and that's our protective self like you wrote down there on the bottom. I just want to make sure this is super
Yep.
clear for the audience.
You are No, this is so freaking awesome. Like, I love what you're saying. Yes, anything that I'm not being clear
Yeah.
on, please tell me. Because
We just think too much and we identify with those thoughts. We need to disidentify from those thoughts. Be aware of
yes,
those thoughts, acknowledge those thoughts, but our thoughts are just suggestions. They're
yes,
suggestions. We don't have to be our thoughts and we don't have to identify with them and act on them. So go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you. I just kind of want
yeah.
to
No, no,
add my 2 cents
this
in.
is
Yeah.
exactly, no, this is exactly right. I just want to point at that. The reason we think we are our thoughts is because every single one of us has had an original core trauma. Right? So I want you to feel this. I just want to answer that because I think what you're pointing at is so brilliant, that I do really want to explain what has happened to each individual. So, like, feel it like this. Like, I'm going to go up here. It's like, so if this was your lifeline, when you're born whole, perfect, and complete, right? Not one baby is born with a self-esteem issue, not one,
Right.
right? So then what happened to us? So I want you to consider that as we were growing, we grow by an emotional bond. It's emotional, it's in the feeling state. We grow by an emotional bond of trust. And when that trust gets broken, we experience an emotional trauma. Okay? That trauma, when we're little like this, we're very little. This happens, we see the most around like 6 months old, 18 months old, 2 years old, like right around in there, really
Okay.
young. And so Yeah. And so what happens, and it doesn't matter if you don't remember it, your subconscious mind always remembers it and it can recall it. It's like Google. You just have to ask
It's
it the right
there.
questions and it really pops it
Hmm.
up. But here's what I'm going with this is when that emotional bond of trust got broken, we experienced an immense shame. It was so traumatic for us as a little kid, a little child. This is why we're going to look lovingly without judgment, that we didn't know what to do and we didn't know how to process the feelings we were feeling. So we internalized those emotions to mean, wow, that means there must be something really wrong with me. Like, that's what we're talking about inside of that. And then that feelings leave us feeling all alone, abandoned, separate, like no one gets us, right? Which is precisely how we describe how one loses the authentic feeling state of their authentic self. And now they go to their mind in their head trying to figure it all
Hmm.
out. Like, does that
Yeah,
make sense?
the first example I thought of is like a mother telling her child, you're the smartest, Johnny. You're so smart, Johnny. And then you get to school and you realize there are children that read better than you, that are better at math. You're like, wait a second, I'm
Mm,
not the smartest kid in the world. So that's kind of the example I thought of. Is that
mm.
kind of on track of what we're talking about?
It'll be on track in the sense of, so whatever happened in the core original root trauma here, I want you to consider that everything that has happened since that has not been random, is not been
Right.
coincidence. Every negative experience you've had from the rest of your life, from the day of your core trauma, will be another freaking, like, it just gets bigger, another event, another
Right.
situation, another experience. You'll see it'll come back to the same damn trauma every freaking
Mhm.
time. It's going to be the same thing, different place, different situation, different person, but same trauma until we heal it, right? Which is why in the ingredients of the recipe of, like, the recipe I call for success is, what is success if we're not really being our true self? So to me, the answer to your original question is, how do we become successful? It's like, the first is to know thyself, like the real self, not like the illusion or the false self, but who am I then from a
Because we
true
all have
self?
a
What, you know,
different
and
definition of success. Like what success is to one
totally,
person is not success to me. So you have to get ultra
totally.
clear on what your definition of success is, what you want your life to look like, what it fulfills you, makes you feel accomplished. That when you're 100 years old and on your deathbed, you can look back and say, "Hey, I was successful." Whether that's deep relationships with your children or your family, or it could be monetary, it could be traveling the world, it could be helping others and serving others and bringing value to the world, maybe just changing one person's life, being a mentor, like volunteering,
Yeah,
growing trees, like whatever it is. So that is really, really important
yeah.
to for me. I just wanted to say that to all the people
A,
listening.
a thousand percent. And I always say the same thing to every single person. Like, they'll say, but I don't know what it is that I want to be. And I'm like, you're not going to know that until you first uncover who you really are. So we have to actually heal this trauma. And then you awaken, which is why I'm known as the Awaken
Okay.
Entrepreneur, is every single time people go, oh my gosh, I feel so awake, because where before you're like in the movie with
Mhm.
everybody. And so you don't see outside of the movie because you're in the trauma drama with everybody. What happens afterwards is you come out and you're like, holy shit, I see everybody. Like you awaken to the truth about yourself, others, in life, and things don't look the same. And this is what they mean when they keep saying, just live in the now and live. It's like, what? This is being fully present, what I'm talking about as
Right.
awakening, but that's how you actually get there. And so, like, the way here then is, what we're doing is we're coming from the head into the feeling state. So how we get there, this is where it's going to help so many people understand this, because it's just 5 simple steps. I'm going to make it really
Okay.
simple, but you're going to, in order to go from your head to the feeling state, the first step is you have to then stop and pause and observe.
Mhm.
Like, you have to look down at the programming or patterning you're running. Have you ever noticed, it's like, let me stop there for a second. Have you ever noticed, like, let's say if you're in New York City, right? Because in the United States, if you're in New York City, could you imagine, like, when you're at ground level, what it looks like at the base of the New York's, the Empire State Building? But if you were to go up to the top, what you see is completely different. Same location, higher level of consciousness, right? What I'm saying is you don't jump context. You don't stop doing the situation you're doing and then distract yourself. I'm saying stay where you were and what you were feeling. And then what I'm asking you to do is from inside of that, pull up and look down, stop, pause, and observe yourself, accessing what's happening in the programming from a neutrality, right? And the second step, so this is, we're going to stop and observe. The second step here is going to be, we're going to look lovingly. You're not going to resist or beat the heck out of your ego and get it into submission. Have you noticed everybody's been doing that? It doesn't work. You can't beat it you don't enlighten the
We have to
ego.
be
I wish somebody would have told me
self-compassionate with
that.
ourselves. Treat ourselves like
Completely.
you would treat a best friend, guys. Treat yourself like you would treat a best friend.
That's right. You're going to look lovingly from curiosity, like what's coming up? Like you want to like really, what was I making that mean? Whatever you were focusing on, what was I making it mean? So the second one is really look from curiosity, right? What was I making it
Ah,
mean? And then the third step is now you want to process whatever meaning came up. Meaning we're going to sort what's the truth and what's a lie about that from a higher level of consciousness. Like, what is really going on here? Like, you're going to start to see the truth from the lie. And then when you get to that, number 4 is you're going to go all in on the feeling state of the truth, right? You're going to go all in on it. And so by doing that, what that does is it returns yourself back into alignment with your true self. And that's when you take action from alignment. Now you will always get the results and the success you want.
wow. That's the recipe right there. So what do you think is the
That is it.
hardest part for people?
A lot of time, and it's not their fault. So I really want to say this with the most love because we've been like, as a society, we think a trauma is something like, and don't get me wrong, these are traumas. We heal all kinds of traumas. So somebody who's been molested or somebody who has been severely beaten, what we don't acknowledge is a trauma is like a disconnected mother or father who wasn't present with us, who um, didn't want a girl or didn't want a boy, and we feel all of that as babies. Like we don't recognize that those things as trauma. I remember one woman that we healed. Her trauma was when she was like 2 years old. She was in utter complete bliss and she was playing in the leaves. And she was just so like the bliss that she was feeling and the flow and the love and everything that was happening. And all her father said to her is, "We got to go." Now, he didn't beat her. He didn't hit her. He didn't like scream at her, shame her. He was just like, "We got to go." But she made it mean. This is why trauma is in the eye of the beholder, not in the event. She made it mean that people could take away your happiness, right? And that others had more power than her. And so then she grew up to be like someone who always struggled with men and in relationships. And in her business, it always showed up as someone who, felt like people would take away that power. If she got too big and was seen, somebody's going to come and take it all away. So what's the point? So we have to heal those things, that emotion. And then she went on to create a really successful business. She was having a side job. She left her side hustle, became full-time, very successful, married the man of her dreams, and now is having a child. So
Love to hear that.
story tells just come true.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is incredible. So all the people that are listening right now, obviously they need to be
Yeah.
more aware of their ego. They need to start processing their emotions better and recognize their past
Yes.
trauma and get out of their head and
Yes.
into their heart. But if you had to give just a small piece of advice to anyone that is struggling right now in their business specifically, what's some
Yeah.
tangible advice you can tell them that they can
Yeah.
take action on immediately?
No, that's a great question. So the thing that I would want to give them the most is that for every like, let me say it this way, because I'm gonna give you the real tangible. Okay, here's the truth. There's a universal law called the Law of Polarity, right? And the Law of Polarity says that nothing in this universe, in this time space reality we live in, does there exist a half of something. So everything's existing in an equal and opposite whole. So what does that mean? So that means for up to exist, down must exist. For in to exist, out must exist. So that means for a problem to exist, the equal and opposite solution must equally exist at the same moment in time. Not a different moment, but the exact same moment. So the best piece of advice I could give someone that is struggling right now in a moment is what you want to do is stop framing the problem as a problem. Because when you frame it as a problem, what you're doing is you're tricking your brain into thinking that there's no solution. Like as if problems are just problems and these are things we have to deal with. No, I want you to do the opposite. I want you to consider that every problem has a solution. And the way to get it is you want to switch it over to curiosity. If there was a solution to this, how could I actually resolve this? And then expect the intuition, expect the answer.
Okay.
That is exactly the first thing that I would tell somebody to do.
Amazing.
Right there in that
and
moment.
that's ironic. I want to tell a little story, a little anecdote on that
Sure.
actually is to my business. I'm a certified life coach, certified nutritionist. I'm also a full-time realtor, and I'm trying to balance, what's the best use of my time, energy, and attention to not only each career and business, but also what micro tasks I should be focusing on, right? Whether it's finishing my book or if it's having more coaching conversations, or if it's recording more podcasts. And the podcast is one of the things I enjoy doing the most. I love having these conversations with people like you and just really filling my cup, filling your cup, and sharing our conversation with the audience because they get value from it too. But the podcast has really yielded incredible results in so many different ways. But I'm like, how could I do the podcast even better? I was curious, right? And even though I didn't really have a problem, I was curious, like, hey, there is a better solution to just doing the podcast, even though it's going well and it's growing and I'm having great guests and so many New York Times bestselling authors and experts and leaders. And, how can I make it better? I said, you know what? What if I worked with PR companies and they sent me their best clients? So I reached out to a couple, instead of me like finding people and DMing people and reaching out, said, I'm going to reach out to some PR companies. I'm going to work with them, help them out. They're going to help me out. And now my calendar is full of incredible guests that I don't even have to reach out to. Like, you and I met because, a company connected us. They connected us, and we're bringing value to each other's lives. And so that was one way I was like, okay, how can I be doing this better? And, over time, there's going to be more solutions to more problems, but not framing them as problems, like you said, right? Framing them as potential solutions, right?
Always, 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 right? That there's always going to be, in order for a problem to remain a problem, there's always going to be a letting go of something.
Yeah.
Can you feel that? Like, there always has to be a letting go, because all fear, if you feel this, all fear is really a result of our attachment to something. Like, once we become attached to and feel this, right? Like, we're going back to that original core trauma, right? Once we tell ourselves that we have a problem, we remain trapped in our own solutions to that problem, right? We don't actually come out of the trap. So the very first thing that we have to do when we're stuck in a problem is be able to pull back and look down at the trap. We can't get out of a trap we don't even know we're in.
Right.
Right? But these are going to give your listeners and yourselves like really skills of like, oh, here is a breakdown of a step-by-step. This is how we actually do it. And when we have these skills and we know how to put this all together, and there's a recipe for success. I've built 2 multi-million-dollar companies, and it's not as hard as people think. It's actually really simple. It's just the mind will overcomplicate it, right? Because what's stopping all of us is not logical. It's actually emotional. So when you really see the whole recipe for success, whatever it is that you want, and I really believe everybody, just like how you said, everybody needs to start with what success is for them, right? And then we're applying the right business model that fits for their lifestyle based on who they are and the impact they want to make in this world. Then we apply the right vehicle, because all a business is a vehicle, right? As a way to say it, it's just a vehicle that allows then your natural self-expression to be expressed in the world, being able to give people real value, which is why a business exists. It has to solve a problem, and you know that they're going to give you money in exchange for that value, and then rinse, lather, and repeat consistently.
Awesome.
Right?
Well, Mia, I want to thank you so much for your time out of your busy schedule to hop on the podcast today. To all the people that are listening on Apple and Spotify, go ahead and check out Mia's book, Meant for More. You can get it on miahewett.com. That's miahewett.com. Follow Mia on Instagram at mia.hewett, mia.hewett. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for sticking around until the end. I'm going to drop all of Mia links below. You can check her out. Mia, thank you so much. Was there anything that I missed in that conclusion?
No, thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me, Zach. And thanks so much for the work you're doing and really standing for people inside of, nutrition and life coaching and giving them your best self. I so appreciate the work you're doing in the world.
It's great to have a life coaching business and get compensated for helping people, but the greatest results I've gotten from being a life coach is that I have to step into the greatest version of myself every single day, right? I can't tell people to wake up early and meditate and eat healthy and exercise and do all these, mental health care type things if I'm not doing them. So it's really held me to a higher standard, and I have this obligation, responsibility to be the best. And I get to connect with people like you. So thank you so much for all your kind words. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge today. To all the people that are listening, you got to put this stuff into action. Knowledge is useless unless it's applied to your life. So go ahead, take action, think less, feel more, right? It's not that hard to be successful. You just got to reframe the problems to a creative solution. All right, Mia. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.